All right, well, thank you. It is my honor to be here to talk with you today about movement and fat disorders. I have no financial relationship to disclose, but I would like to start with a question. Did you know that animals in the zoo have exercise programs? Did you know this? And why do you think that is? Animals in the zoo have exercise programs because their environment no longer provides them the opportunity needed to keep their bodies and minds healthy. Even in the best laid out environment, these animals no longer move the way that they would move in nature, right? So their needs are all provided for: their food, their water, their shelter, their friends. So why do you think humans need exercise programs? For really the same reason, right? Due to modern conveniences like the refrigerator, the stove, running water, social media, all of our needs can be met with very little physical effort. And yet our tissues themselves still need movement and loads in order to stay healthy. Modern conveniences are a wonderful thing, but it can benefit our health to just think for a moment about how much things have changed in the last few decades and how that's impacted our movement. For instance, as a child, you probably moved more than your children, and as children, your parents probably moved more than you. So in a very short amount of time, we can really see some big changes. This chart illustrates one person's physical activity level over the course of a week. And what do you notice about this chart? It's really blue. And the dark blue represents where this person has been lying down, sitting, or standing during waking hours. So a lot of stillness, right? And this is not unusual. The typical American spends 10 hours a day in stillness. And that's even people like me who are personal trainers. I have definitely spent more than 10 hours a day in stillness yesterday and today, and it really didn't bother me that much. So, we're kind of used to this, so it's really something that we see. But even though this does mean that we are sedentary, in fact, we are the most sedentary culture in the history of the world, it does not mean that we're lazy. So Americans have very busy, scheduled lives with very little time to rest or relax. And this gives us the impression, this gives our brains the illusion that we are always on the move. I remember when I was a single parent, I would get up in the morning, get my kids ready for school, go to work, try to get as much work done as I could in the shortest amount of time, which often meant skipping lunch. I would take them to soccer or to the dentist, make dinner, and then get ready to start the whole day over. And I was physically exhausted, but my physical activity level was low, right? Would you agree? So this is probably not uncommon to many of your schedules. So it does not mean that we're lazy, it just means that we have sedentary lifestyles. So I've been in the fitness industry for 30 years, and I have stage 1 lipedema. It started when I was 13, like many of you. It just kind of rolled right up on me right around puberty. I've had 2 children, and I'll turn 50 this year, so I've kind of faced all the little hormone challenges along the way. So if I can, it leaves me uniquely informed and interested in this topic. So what I've learned is really, despite the chronic condition, and I've worked with many different chronic conditions over the years, all bodies need to move. All bodies need to move, but maybe not all bodies need to exercise. So we can think about that for a minute. Movement, like a proper diet, can prevent or delay the progression of this disease, which is very powerful. We are part of a sedentary society, and so I ask myself, and maybe you'd like to ask yourself, if movement is the nutrient, perhaps, that is lacking most in your diet. And if it is, how could you supplement some movement in a way that makes sense to where your body is today? So I have some suggestions. But before I go through those, I'll just very briefly touch on how exercise can touch all the different aspects of your body that the doctor spoke about earlier today, right? It can definitely impact your circulatory system. It can impact your gut, by helping you have a healthier microbiome in your gut, improving your digestion, helping with constipation, and strengthening your pelvic floor. It can help you to realign your body, reducing the wear and tear that you have and the joint pain that you have. It can help you to regulate your hormones, reduce inflammation, and improve body composition. So how do we add movement patterns back into our day? So that's the question. So raise your hand if you like to exercise, and don't be ashamed if you don't, because a lot of people don't. It's not really very natural. Okay. And how many of you are not sure if you like to exercise or not? Haven't quite gone there yet. Okay, fair enough. So whether you exercise or whether you don't, this is good news. Adding movement patterns back into your day is a very safe and practical way for you to improve your health. So I want you to think about movement similar to the way that you would think about food. I want you to think about trying to move a little bit all day long, trying to have a movement breakfast, a movement lunch, a movement dinner, and even some movement snacks and dessert too. Just like you need to refuel your body throughout the day with food, you need to nourish the cells of your body throughout the day with movement. Say I walk 2 miles at 7 o'clock in the morning, how does that load my body versus if I broke that 2 miles up over the course of the day? It's a really different load, right? Maybe something more manageable. Your lymphatic system might even appreciate that more as opposed to getting a lot of attention in one small block, it's getting it throughout the day. So there's a lot of benefits to spreading out that load throughout the day. And furthermore, research is starting to show, and I have some research things I'll share with you at the end, research is starting to show that a single bout of exercise 3 to 4 times a week, or even every day, is not enough to offset a sedentary lifestyle. But that small movement breaks throughout your day can be very powerful in moving your health forward. So it really is very important. So it's a little tricky to think about how you're going to put those simple movement snacks into your day. And when you hurt all over, it's even that much more challenging. So I want to tell you about a client that I had. She did not have a fat disorder, but she had many of the similar symptoms that we share. She was having hormonal problems, weight gain, joint problems, headaches, and she had a schedule. She worked for the university, so she worked from 7 in the morning until 8 or 10 at night. And so it was a very challenging schedule. She went to her doctor to check and see what the doctor would say, and what do you think the doctor said? Lose weight and exercise. So she started coming to the Y 3 to 4 mornings a week, and she did not get the results that she was hoping for, and that is because she was becoming very sleep deprived, right? So it was 2 goals kind of competing against each other. So the sleep deprivation was not helping her hormones, was not helping her headaches, her stress level. And also, even if she exercised every morning for an hour, are there any math people here? What percentage of your time do you think that is? 4%. You guys are smart. I would have had to have a calculator out, but 4%. So what happens in the 96% of your day matters, right? So she was killing herself, and she wasn't getting very far with that. So what we tried to do was we started with having her have some little movement snacks throughout the day. So we started with walking 2 to 5 minutes every hour, as the research does show that this can significantly reduce the negative impact of sitting. And she was like, does this really matter? And back to the title of my talk, movement matters. Yes, it matters. So it may not feel like it matters. It's different. It's not something you see in Shape magazine. It's not high intensity training. It may not feel like it matters, but movement and loads absolutely matter to your body. And you just have to remind yourself of that when you're like, oh, this seems so lame. It feels like I'm hardly doing anything. It matters. And the research shows that it matters. So because she was working, she oftentimes couldn't go off and walk for 2 to 5 minutes. So we also incorporated having her stand up every 50 minutes and see if she could stand for part of the meeting for about 10 minutes. And she also had the people that she was meeting with sometimes would join her, so it became kind of fun. I do live in Boulder, so it might be a little weird other places. We also talked about making small skeletal adjustments to the way that she was sitting and standing. So just by adjusting the way that she would sit and stand, she could strengthen her body and release parts of her body that were tightening. And then, of course, we talked about the importance of just varying your posture and moving throughout the day, how important that really, really is to your overall health. And the outcome was she easily gets a mile a day of walking. So that's 5 miles a day times 52 weeks a year. How many miles is that? My math people again, is that like 260 or something? So she's getting a lot of mileage in with her walking. She was able to loosen up her back and her hips. Now, she still really preferred going to the Y and sweating and lifting heavy weights, and that was fine, but she no longer felt the pressure to be choosing between getting a good night's rest and working out, and being on that on again, off again pattern that so many people experience with exercise. So overall, it was a very good experiment, and she did very well. Another thing I'd like you to think about, particularly if you're in a lot of pain, is breathing. And breathing is really an underrated exercise. Breathing is really a superfood movement. So it provides so many positive benefits to your body, and it just seems like it can be so easily overlooked. So breathing could be a nice movement snack or meal that you incorporate into your day. Breathing helps to utilize the diaphragm, which helps to move the lymph in your body the same way the heart helps to move the blood. It also helps to relax your muscles, and so you're able to have a little bit higher metabolism and more energy. Another superfood movement that I think almost everyone can take advantage of is just being outdoors. And it's great if you can take a little walk or move your exercise outside, but even just moving your break or your lunch outdoors can have significant benefits to your health. There's just so many benefits to being outdoors. Once you start feeling better, you might want to think about a more traditional exercise program. And people always ask me, well, what do you think is the best? Which is a hard question to answer. And I don't know that I think there is a best. But I do think that it's important for everyone, not just people with fat disorders, but really anybody who wants to live in their body for 10 decades, to think about how we're using our body. And so ideally, you would be not sitting when you do your exercise. You would be moving your arms and legs together. You would use minimal knee bending, and it would be gentle on your joints. So the exercises that I've found that fit that bill for most people are walking. It's a nice coordinated activity. Water exercise, particularly in the vertical position. Qigong, which is very similar to Tai Chi, but it uses minimal bending with the knees, so it's a little easier on your body. I don't even know if they sell the Nordic tracks anymore, but do you guys remember what a Nordic track is? If you have one in your garage, take it back out. It's a good piece of equipment. It's got the little slats and the ropes, and you do your cross-country skiing action. And then there's some types of strength training that fit this criteria as well. But if none of those things appeal to you, I think it's really important that you take a moment to think about what does appeal to you, because this is a whole you experience. So it's very important that you find movement activities that you love to do. Whatever you decide to do should really nurture your spirit, your mind, and your body, and it shouldn't feel like a chore. Some people like to know how I put together my day, and this is usually how I start my day. I get up pretty early, and I do some alignment exercises for like 15 minutes in the morning. Mid-morning is when I do my more traditional exercise. A couple days a week I do strength training. A couple days a week I do balance exercises. And a couple days a week I do step aerobics, which is definitely not on the previous list. Lots of knee bending. This time of year, I like to go and take my lunch outside. And on my way home, I'll go for a midday walk, just like a half a mile to a mile. I'll usually stop by a trail or a neighborhood, plug in my earbuds, listen to a podcast, or perhaps I'll call my sister or one of my children. My movement dinner is fairly anchored in this time of year also. I come home in the afternoon and I'll spend a lot of time in my garden and with my dogs. And I have some trouble with plantar fasciitis, so my movement dessert is a good foot massage, even if it's just with a tennis ball. But this is also a good time to do dry brushing or some of the myofascial release techniques that you may know. So as you think about how you might put together your movement schedule, this is what you might want to think about. You might want to, it's really important not to just leave it to chance, like today I've kind of been leaving it to chance, like when it's like break time, I just sort of mosey around and look for food and I'm not really doing anything. But when I have a plan, I'm going to, I'm a little bit more active with my plan. So it's important to not just leave things to chance, it's important to kind of have a plan with what you're going to do. So you might want to brainstorm activities or things that you'd like to accomplish in the morning, what you might like to do in the afternoon or in the evening. Brainstorm those things. They can be a combination of traditional exercises, simple movements, or even just chores that you have to do that you might want to add a little bit extra movement to, say like mopping the floor. And if you don't know where to start, think about what activities you already do and see if maybe you can make them a little bit more active. So for instance, if you're going to commute to work, you might be able to, if you happen to live near a bus, add some more movement and productivity even to your time by taking public transportation. So you have to get out to the bus stop, you're carrying your stuff, you get on the bus, you might be able to read, then you walk to your place of work. That's a good way to add movement. If you don't live near a bus, you might think about, well, what else could I do to add movement to my commute? So you might, instead of just using the button on your car to unlock your car doors, you might make a pledge to yourself to only use the key. And you might not think that adds a lot of movement, but try it. So it does. And you can think about your alignment while you're in the car. You can think about making your car ride also kind of a little bit of a yoga ride. So you're making sure that your neck's in alignment, your ribs are down. We're working to realign our back so we don't have that hyperkyphosis that Dr. Herbst talked about. So that there's just little things you can do to make whatever you're doing in your day already to have more movement, and it won't even take more time. You'll also want to think about what days are a little bit busier, which days you might want a lighter, easier movement meal snack plan. And you might want to even think about movements that you could kind of call your celebratory movements. So you might think about a breakfast that you really like to have on Mother's Day. What if there was a hike that you really like to do on Mother's Day? Or something that you really wanted to enjoy on your birthday that was movement related? So you can have some fun with it. You can really think about how to make this a pleasant and enjoyable experience. So I want to leave lots of time for questions for you guys, but I also want to let you know that I'm here to help you as much as I can. I do have a Facebook site that's called Restorative Movement for Ladies with Lipedema, and I'm going to there are some suggestions on there, and I'll just keep adding to that. But it's really important that you know when it's a silly exercise, maybe like exercising your feet, and you think, is this really important? It's really important. Your feet have 33 joints in them, 66 joints between the 2 feet, just in your feet. So every movement matters. It all matters. The key is to find the activities that work for you and to make sure that you're integrating them into your day.